Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the opening drive here on Penn State ComRadio. I'm John McHugh here, joined by Brandon Pelter and Dave Arroyo. Guys, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. I'm really excited. Dreary game day here in State College, but we have a lot of great games on tap for today.
It should be an exciting day of college football today.
Yeah, and we're going to bring you through that day of college football. We'll give you some game previews, maybe a little Heisman talk. It's not too early, folks. We're in week 5. We're getting through the season. All right, so our first game today we're going to cover is a Big 12 matchup, West Virginia at Oklahoma, both undefeated. Two high-powered offenses, both averaging over 40 points a game, over 500 yards on offense a game. Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield, the transfer from Texas Tech, that was a whole saga. He waited the whole year to play at Oklahoma, and it doesn't look like it's affected him. Over 1,000 yards passing already, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. These teams are very even on paper. Who do you guys think is gonna pull this one out?
I think in the end, I think West Virginia, even though they haven't really been proven yet, I just like more what I have seen from West Virginia. Baker Mayfield, although he's coming off that win last week, it's not really him that I'm concerned with. It's more that defense. That defense gave up 38 points to a Tulsa team who should not have been hanging with them. Although I think Oklahoma has more weapons, I just have this feeling that West Virginia is going to go into Oklahoma and steal a game that they should not be winning.
You know, Dave, I have to disagree with you here. I think Oklahoma really has the advantage, and you said it yourself, they have the weapons. You know, last year, Samaj Perine against West Virginia at West Virginia had 242 yards and 4 touchdowns on 34 carries. So if he can have a day similar to that, not even the same, but similar to that, I think it'll be a big day for Oklahoma, and it'll end in a big win.
All right, so we got a little disagreement between you two here. Brandon, let me ask you first. Why do you think Oklahoma pulls one out? What do you think is going to be the difference?
At the end of the day, I think when you look at these two high-powered offenses, it comes down to defense. You'll hear a lot of coaches say defense wins championships, and honestly, that's what it's going to be in this matchup, and I think Oklahoma has the advantage there.
Well, and see, Brandon, that's where I disagree with you. I think West Virginia has the advantage. West Virginia coming in with a +3 turnover margin. Granted, once again, not against great competition, but that's a stat, no matter who you play, is an impressive stat. I just think that West Virginia defense, much improved from last year, is going to go into Oklahoma and be able to slow down Baker Mayfield enough where that West Virginia offense, you know they're going to put up points. They're going to be able to take that game. Yeah,
interesting that such a high-powered game is really just going to come down to who can withstand the offenses more. All right, so our second game now, Minnesota at Northwestern. Northwestern has these years every now and then where you're a couple of weeks into the season and they're undefeated. And nobody's really paid much attention to them after their Week 1 win against Stanford. That's really been their only test. The last 2 weeks, they have been a little shaky. I mean, they barely escaped versus a Duke team that's weak and a MAC team in Ball State who is consistent every year, but not the team that you really want hanging around much. Now, Minnesota has had 3 easy wins. Their one loss, though, close to TCU. Brandon, who do you think is going to come out with this one? Is it going to be Northwestern's first loss, or will the Wildcats keep going the way they have been?
You know, I think I give Northwestern the advantage here. They're at home. They have been playing well. You did say a little shaky, but they proved themselves against Stanford, and I don't see them losing at home. I think if this game is at Minnesota, it could be a different story, and they will hang in this whole game. It'll be a close one, a back-and-forth affair, but I see Northwestern taking the win.
Yeah, I agree with Brandon. I think that defense is what's going to win them that game. You said they held a Stanford offense, a very good Stanford offense, to 6 points in the first game they played. And let's not forget, that Duke team just put up 30-plus against a pretty good Georgia Tech team, held them to 10 points. So I think that Northwestern defense is what's going to win them that game.
Yeah, I mean, they are only letting up, I think, it's an average of 8 points a game. It's something great, and I personally don't really see a way that Minnesota can go in. There's not a huge home field advantage with Northwestern. It's not the football school that a lot of other teams in the Big Ten is, but still, you're home, you're feeling good, your fans are there. I agree with you guys. I think Northwestern wins this one. Now to the game that is probably closest to all of our hearts here in State College today, 12 o'clock kickoff. Army at Penn State at Beaver Stadium. Penn State coming off that grinded-out win against San Diego State last week. San Diego State really stayed in that game a lot longer than I think most people would have thought really just the odd way, the defensive lineman touchdown. In the end, they ended up winning handily. But now you bring in the triple option of Army, which is always tough to defend against, even if it is against a weaker team. The triple option's tough. You got to change your entire game plan for it. Do you guys think that Penn State will be able to handle that threat?
Well, if there's been one thing the Penn State defense has done well this season, it's been stopping the run. So I don't really see that changing, especially with the team as run-heavy as Army. And not to mention, most of their offensive line is undersized and outmatched by guys like Carl Nassib, Anthony Zettel. They're just so much stronger and faster than that offensive line for Army that I don't really see Penn State. Here and there, they'll probably have some issues because it is the triple option. This is the first team this year they're playing. I don't even know if they play another one that runs the triple option. So it's going to be a little daunting at first, but I think in the end, that Penn State team's going to figure it out, and they're not going to give up a lot of yards on the ground.
Yeah, that's one of the bigger problems with the triple option. You only see this look once or twice, maybe every 5 years. So you could go through entire recruiting classes with people who will never see the triple option, but then you have it on your schedule and you need to prepare for it. Brandon, what do you think about this game?
You know, exactly what Dave said. Penn State football, you think run defense, you think linebacker, those are the names that come to mind, and this is going to be a defensive-minded game for Penn State from the start. With the rainy weather and the dreary conditions, like I mentioned before, that's what it's going to be. Penn State stopping this run game, and then as the game progresses, it'll be establishing themselves offensively. But I think they will have to build off of the linemen, Anthony Zettel, Carl Nassib, Garrett Sickles, Austin Johnson, and then those big linebackers that have been coming up week after week for Penn State.
Yeah, on the point of establishing the offense, I know it might not be the day for it. It's dreary, like you said. We have a high of 46 today. It's going to be rainy, cold, not a good day out there. But Penn State has relied on the run this year. Do you think maybe we start to see more passing thrown in there, or is today just not the day for it?
I don't really think today's the day for it. I think they're going to keep going with that run. But if you never know, because you look a couple weeks back against Buffalo when it was raining, they still decided to throw the ball a little bit more than I would have expected them to.
Yeah. You
look at Hack last week, almost got that 300 yards again. I'm really hoping he gets it this weekend. He's been so close now. Maybe, James Franklin looks at it and says, hey, he's finally starting to get some momentum. Let's stick with it, even though it's raining. Having a big performance today could really boost Christian Hackenberg's confidence.
Yeah.
And, I think for Penn State, they have to establish their run game first, especially with the weather conditions. But once they do that, I see Christian Hackenberg having a huge day today, putting up record numbers for him and breaking that 300-yard passing mark because he's shown that he has a cannon of an arm and he's not afraid to use it. And he did so last week with Saeed Blacknell and Chris Godwin, and I can see him taking advantage of Deshaun Hamilton there as well today.
Yeah, and that offensive line has to be feeling good after all the running success that they've come across the past couple of weeks. We were talking about confidence on Hackenberg's part. How about the confidence that the offensive line is feeling right now? Saquon Barkley and Nikhil Lynch are talented, but you can't do it without the big guys up front. Of course, I say that as a former lineman myself, so I put a little bit more emphasis on them than most people do, but what are you going to do? All right, that's going to take us into our first commercial break. That's all the 12 p.m. games we're going to do for you today. On the other side, we'll be doing 3 p.m. games. We got Texas Tech, Baylor, Ohio State, and Indiana, and others here on the opening drive, Penn State ComRadio.
Don't you dread looking for apartments?
OMG, always.
Just thinking of it makes my brain hurt.
Nope, not me.
What planet are you from, and when does the next ship leave?
I'm serious. Ever since I found A.W. & Sons, life has been a breeze. Their apartments come furnished, and my monthly check includes everything, and the best part is, it's downtown, so I can literally walk anywhere.
Even a Penn State football game?
I'm there.
8 a.m. lecture and forum?
Already saved you a seat.
Sounds too good to be true.
What can I say? A.W. & Sons believes in making life easier for the Penn State student.
We are stronger, Lions pride, stand together, blue and white. Lions pride, show the world your Penn State side. Lions pride, you live it, you love it, Lions pride.
Lions Pride, locally owned and operated in downtown State College since 1976, offers everything Penn State for every Penn Stater. At Lions Pride, we are Penn State.
Lions pride, you live it, you love it, Lions pride.
Welcome back to Opening Drive. All right, we have just gone through the 12 o'clock games. Now we're going to go on to the 3:30 kickoffs. Our first one is Texas Tech and Baylor, 3-1 versus 3-0 at AT&T Stadium, a big rivalry game. Baylor is favored by 17, and if you look at this game, you analyze everything, they are much closer than 17, in my opinion. Dave, do you think that spread is appropriate, or do you think there's just something that maybe we don't know, or do you think that this game is going to be a lot closer?
The game's going to be so much closer than the spread is indicating. Look first, it's not even at – Baylor doesn't even have a home field advantage here. It's played in a neutral site. Tech last week, though, they did give up 750 yards to TCU. Expect Baylor to do the same. They're going to put up big numbers, but they hung in there. Pat Mahone, DeAndre Washington had 188 yards rushing for 4 touchdowns. They're going to hang in there. It's going to be a close game, but you got to look. Mahone did get hurt last week in the first quarter. You're going to be looking at his health, and you got to ask yourself, can they run the ball against Baylor the same way they did against TCU?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are putting way too much on the fact that game against TCU was a loss, because they stayed in that game despite letting up so many yards. 3 points. That's it. That's all it came down to. Brandon, what do you think of the spread?
I think it's just really blown out of proportion. I really think it's going to be a much closer game now. I do agree that Baylor still has the advantage, but they've put up a lot of big numbers against some not-so-great opponents, and I don't know that you can really look at those numbers and really believe that they're going to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, that's something we always see a lot at this point in the season. You see these teams that you look at their record and you look at their stats and you say, wow, that's a good football team. Then you look at their schedule and they played 2 FCS schools and a MAC school. So it's kind of misleading at this point.
Not to mention, last year against Baylor, Pat Mahone set a freshman passing record for 591 yards. So if he can do anywhere near that, Baylor will be in serious trouble.
Yeah, and that's got to be in the back of his mind. He's ready to do it again. Speaking of a team that has had an easy schedule so far and is undefeated, Indiana, the Hoosiers are hosting number 1 Ohio State. It's a matchup of undefeated teams, but it might be the worst undefeated against undefeated matchup we have ever seen. Do you guys feel the same way?
Oh, completely. Honestly, I don't think this is much of a conversation. It's like a varsity Ohio State team going out against a junior varsity Indiana team. I really don't see much of a contest here, but it should be fun to watch if you want to see big numbers put up.
Yeah, Ohio State has the clear advantage in one area, and that's surprisingly where they've been worse this season, which is the passing game. Indiana is 127th in the country on passing defense.
Jeez.
They only rank 128 teams. So, Cordell Jones or JT Power, it doesn't matter who you trot out there tomorrow, they will put up monster numbers against this secondary. Indiana's only hope is in Jordan Howard, their running back, who has put up 675 yards rushing this year. He's putting up Heisman numbers, but they're not going to be able to score points with Cordell Jones in that offense. Braxton Miller, Ezekiel Elliott, they have too many weapons to not win that game.
Yeah, and even if they do have the ball, like you said, they're a one-dimensional offense. If they can't get the run game going, they can't get anything going, and it's tough to get a run game going against Joey Bosa and that Ohio State defensive line. All right, now to an SEC matchup. Last week, Alabama lost. It feels weird to look at the page in front of me and see number 13, Alabama. They sit at 3-1. They are at Georgia, 4-0. This is the first time in 4 years that Alabama hasn't been favored in any game. That's insane to me. They haven't lost 2 in a row since the 2008 season, and that was the SEC championship and the Sugar Bowl. It's not even like they've been so unhuman. It's weird to see them go back to not mediocrity, but just being average. And so I'm going to ask you, Brandon, what do you think Bama's biggest issue is right now?
I think Alabama really just needs to get their defense in check. I mentioned it earlier, and defense is what's going to win another championship for Alabama. They have the offensive numbers. They have those statistics, but they need to create stops and put the ball in the Alabama offense, and that's what it's going to take
Well, I think it's not only the defense, but you look over at the offensive side of the ball. College football has kind of transitioned into the same thing the NFL is, which is a passing league. You're not going to win championships unless you can pass the football. And Jake Coker for Alabama has not been passing the ball particularly well. Granted, their running back has played great, but Coker threw a few interceptions against Ole Miss that lost them that game, and he has 4 on the year. They're just not strong enough on the offensive side of the football, especially in SEC where, yes, every team plays good defense, but now a lot of the offenses are starting to be a lot better than they used to be. And I just don't think Coker at quarterback is good enough to really beat the best teams in the SEC for Bama this year.
Yeah, that's a thing that Alabama, they've always had a game manager under center. They never have a guy who's going to go first round, who's going to be a big NFL prospect. I mean, you think Greg McElroy, you think Blake Sims, but they've made it work. And for some reason, it might be that Coker just isn't the guy, can't do it, isn't as good as other guys that they've had in the past. But for some reason, that's just not working right now. With that being said, Dave, do you think that Bama can beat Georgia this week, or do you think we're going to see two losses in a row by the Crimson Tide?
I've said this once already this week, and I'll say it again. I think Georgia is going to blow the doors off of Alabama.
That's bold.
You look at Lambert, the quarterback. He has not thrown an interception yet this year, and he's not playing a particularly good Alabama defense. It's not an Alabama defense we are used to seeing. You look at Nick Chubb. He's putting up Heisman numbers. He's run for almost 600 yards this year for 6 touchdowns. Then you go out to the wideouts. You have Malcolm Mitchell, who's caught for 306 yards, and he scored 3 touchdowns. They are a well-balanced team. They're only giving up 13.5 points per game this year, and they're going up against a shaky Alabama offense to begin with.
You know, Dave, I have to disagree with you here. I think even though Alabama may not have that man under center that they're used to that can take the reins here, they still have one of the greatest minds in college football, and that's Nick Saban. And he knows what's going on. I think he's going to put together a great game plan for Alabama. And it will be a tough one. I think it'll really come down to which offense will overpower. But I do see that Alabama offense coming alive and Jake Coker taking advantage and doing what he can this week.
So you have that much confidence just in Nick Saban. So you think he can just take this average quarterback and just game plan around him and pull out a good season with a subpar quarterback?
I think there's no question that Nick Saban has proven himself. No question. I don't think many people can dispute that, and I wouldn't put it past him this week.
And I mean, he's been a mastermind, so there is really no reason to doubt him. So that brings me to you, Dave. Why are you doubting him?
Well, I'm not really doubting Nick Saban. I think Nick Saban's a great guy. You know, he's a great coach. But he does not, like I said, he doesn't have the quarterback that you need now in college football to win games. He's still in the old mentality of I'm going to beat you with good defense, which he doesn't have this year, and I'm going to beat you with a run game. He does, and then you look at Georgia. Mark Richt has been there forever, it feels like, at Georgia. So I feel like if anyone can go there and show, Nick Saban, I guess you could say upstage Nick Saban and outcoach him and just be come out there with a better team, it's going to be Mark Richt. And I think he's ready after many years of, Georgia being the favorite team, actually, and then just to fall to Alabama. But I think this is finally the year that Georgia is going to go in there and they're going to put a beating on Alabama.
Yeah, that's probably the best one later this afternoon. That'll be all the games we just talked about will be 3:30 kickoffs, and that will bring us to our second commercial break. On the other side, we will be talking the primetime games. We got a lot to talk about. Ole Miss, Florida, Notre Dame, and Clemson, and that's just 2 of the great matchups we have coming for you on the other side of the break on Opening Drive on Penn State ComRadio.
The Penn State Bookstore says it's great to be in the beautiful Pagula Ice Arena. That's right, the Hockey Valley Team Shop is open and ready for you to stop by at every men's hockey game. Check out the new gear for the year, and if you need a jersey, sweatshirt, pullover, hat, or even a puck, you can get it at the Hockey Valley Team Shop, located in the Pagula Ice Arena. The Penn State Bookstore, the official bookstore of Penn State Athletics.
You've got to live downtown.
You've just got to live downtown.
What if I don't want to live downtown?
What?
Someone talk to him. I just can't.
I mean, it sounds great. It just seems inconvenient, with classes and...
Shh, my friend, my poor little clueless friend. You don't have to worry about any of that thanks to A.W. & Sons. A.W. & Sons has 5 rental properties downtown within walking distance to everything.
What about
Your 1 monthly check covers all of that.
even...
Already covered.
I would still need...
Furniture is already there, bro. A.W. & Sons has the answer to all your problems.
Man, I've got to live downtown.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Opening Drive Show. Once again, I'm John McHugh here with Dave Arroyo and Brandon Pelter. We've given you the 12 o'clock kicks. We've given you the 3:30. Now we're going to go on to the big boys, the prime time players, the night games. And we're going to start off with another SEC matchup. Number 3 Ole Miss coming off that huge win against Alabama. And number 25 Florida, who sits at 4-0. Looks like the Gators are finally getting it back together, but they have had trouble the past 2 weeks. I mean, they only beat Kentucky by 5 points and just 1 point over Tennessee. Tennessee has been resurgent in recent years, but still hasn't really been the power that they once were. Now, here's my question for you, Dave. Is Florida the real deal, or have they just had 4 easy games?
Florida's just had 4 easy games, and one of them they almost lost. They probably should have lost that game against Tennessee. They barely won that one. And Florida's going to have a real tough time this week against Robert Nkemdiche for Ole Miss. He's playing what's been a shaky line all year for Florida, and he should have a field day. Ole Miss, too, if you look at their offense, you have Chad Kelly at quarterback, who's played very well this year. Like I've said before, we've moved to this, once again, college football is now a quarterback's league, I'm thinking. And Chad Kelly should have a field day against this Florida team. I don't even think they're in the same bracket of competition.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. I mean, the only thing that kept Florida in the game and led them to a victory last week was Kelvin Taylor, who had 19 carries for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I don't see him putting up those same numbers. Like you mentioned, with the passing game, Ole Miss has a lot. They have a lot of options. They have Treadwell, Quincy Adebayo, Cody Core, and Evan Engram. A lot of great threats that they can go down the field with.
So you guys both seem really high on Ole Miss, kind of down on Florida, but then you look at the spread, and Ole Miss is only favored by a touchdown. That's incredible to see for any game that's 3 versus 25. Do you guys agree with that spread, or do you think it's too little?
I think it's a little bit too low, mostly because Florida's going there with a freshman quarterback in Greer, who's virtually been untested so far this year. Once again, they pulled a late one out last week against Tennessee, but that's a completely different team from this Ole Miss team. This Ole Miss team will not collapse at the end like that. I think the spread's a little bit too close, but it's not out. It's the SEC, so these games are always closer than they should be.
And I agree with you, Dave. It is a little too close, but you can't put Brian Poole and safeties Keanu Neal and Marcus May for Florida. You can't push them aside. They're going to do well. I just think Ole Miss has too many weapons.
So clearly you guys are both on the Ole Miss camp. Do you think going down into the swamp, I mean, it's SEC country down there, that is tough, especially now that Florida's been resurgent. I mean, the past couple of years you probably could have went down to Florida, may not have been the best crowds, but this year they're 4-0. They're excited. Their fan base is pumped, and this is really something that Ole Miss had to deal with last week. They dealt with it well last week, but 2 games in a row on the road in tough environments can really take a toll on you. Brandon, do you think that's going to be in the mind of Ole Miss?
I think any team in college football, if they want to be a championship contender, they have to be able to go into these environments and compete. And I really don't see Ole Miss having any trouble. Will it phase them? Maybe, right, from the starting kickoff, that first drive, okay. But from there, I think it's all football, and Ole Miss comes out with a victory.
Yeah, I agree with Brandon, but I also think Tuscaloosa is a completely different animal than the swamp at this point, because Alabama is just so used to winning, so that fan base, I feel like, just gets a lot more rowdier at this point. I think the Florida fans know what they are. I think they know that they're not expected to compete for an SEC title this year. So I don't expect them to be as fired up and passionate as those Alabama fans were. So once again, I think Ole Miss should go in there and should get an easy victory.
All right. Now, speaking of hostile environments, our next game is one of the most hostile environments in the country. we have Mississippi State, a 3-1 team, traveling to Kyle Field to take on Texas A&M, undefeated Texas A&M. Now, I mentioned that Mississippi State's 3-1, but their only loss came to LSU, and it was a 2-point loss. They lost 21-19, and there's never really – LSU is one of those teams that you're never going to hang your head too much after losing to. Les Miles keeps that team consistently great year after year. So who do you guys think is going to take this one? I mean, Texas A&M really hasn't been tested. Their one win against a ranked opponent was against Arizona State, who got taken to the woodshed by USC last week. So do you think this one's going to be close, or do you think we're going to see a clear-cut winner here?
This game should be extremely close, mostly for the reason that both these teams have played against other teams who, other than LSU from Mississippi State, they haven't really played great competition, but yet have still played close to that competition. A&M played 28-21 to Arkansas. You know, you look at Mississippi State played 17-9 to an Auburn team who most people don't consider to be good at all this year, who are like the bottom dwellers of the SEC this year. But for me, the difference maker is going to be Kyle Allen for Texas A&M. Dare I say, he reminds me a lot of Johnny Manziel in the way he plays and the energy he's bringing there to A&M and Kyle Field. And I think he's going to be the difference maker. I don't think Prescott, even though he is, you know, he has the experience, I don't think he's really shown me enough for me to confidently take that Mississippi State team and win a tough game at Kyle Field.
All right, Brandon, what do you got?
I agree with you here, Dave. As rare as that one happens, I think Texas A&M pulls this one out. Both teams haven't been tested all too well. You mentioned LSU, which was a game. I mean, LSU's a great team, and they hung in there. But both of them really have something to prove tonight. You mentioned Kyle Allen, who's played very well. I also see Tra Carson coming out tonight and having a good game as well.
All right, so from that one to, I swear, we're getting out of the SEC. I know it was 3 in a row, but now we're going to go to an ACC matchup. Notre Dame and Clemson. Notre Dame has really kept their stuff together more than I think they were going to after Zaire went down. They are undefeated, and Clemson is too. They're 3-0. Notre Dame's 4-0. But Clemson struggled with a weak Louisville team last year. Louisville really hasn't been much in recent years since Teddy Bridgewater left. This one, I think is pretty obvious, is going to come down to how Deshaun Kaiser can play in another hostile environment down in Death Valley. That's one of the toughest places to play in the country. And I mean, he's been a game manager so far, but do you guys think he'll be able to keep up his performance, or do you think today is where we see his inexperience?
I don't think today is going to be the day that we see the inexperience. You look at the way Kaiser's played. He's played against good competition. You look at that Georgia Tech game, I think was his coming out game and showing that he's the real deal. Beating that Georgia Tech team who, granted, has lost a few games since then, but is still a very good ACC opponent. And Clemson's just not impressive to me. Every year it seems like people are talking up this Clemson team who never actually performs to the hype that surrounds the team. So I don't actually see – I think Notre Dame continues what some people might call luck, call it the luck of the Irish, if you will. I think Notre Dame should continue this. And they've played well on defense, which to me that matters a lot more than the play of Kaiser. That should keep them in most games.
I think it's funny that you're bringing up teams that people talk about and never perform. How about the team on the other side of the ball? Notre Dame is supposed to be America's team, and when was the last time they won a championship? 1988. It's interesting. It's very interesting when two teams like that match up because you really never know what you're going to see. All right, Brandon, what do you got on this one?
Again, I think Notre Dame's the clear cut here. We mentioned Kaiser. We also have a good running game. CJ Procase at running back, he's done great. He has over 600 yards on the season, and I don't see Clemson really stepping in their way all too much. I think, again, the offense really asserts themselves this week, and Notre Dame is walking away with a victory.
All right, so from the East Coast, now we're going to go to the West Coast, the late game tonight on ESPN. Arizona stands at 3-1, and Stanford also standing at 3-1. Arizona, you look at that team and you compare their stats with Stanford, and they have a much much better numbers, but they've also had a much weaker schedule. They're also coming off a big loss to UCLA. And Stanford's only big win is against USC, who was ranked number 6th at the time. And again, we go back to that game against Northwestern that we were talking about when we were talking about the Wildcats game. How do you see this game going? Because right now it seems like there's two Stanfords. There's the one that showed up week 1 and couldn't get anything going at Northwestern, and then there's the one that beats a number 6 ranked team. Which one do you think we see today?
I think we're going to see more of that team that we saw against USC, who can just put up points at will. You saw what UCLA was able to do against Arizona, just put points on the board. And I think this Stanford offense is as good, if not better, than that UCLA offense, especially considering UCLA has a freshman at quarterback.
Yeah.
You have a senior here in Kevin Hogan for Stanford. So I think that Northwestern game, I think that speaks a lot more toward how good Northwestern is rather than how bad Stanford is. I think Stanford's going to put up a lot of points like they normally do, and I don't think Arizona has enough firepower to keep up with that.
Yeah, I agree with you here again, Dave.
We're agreeing too much.
Way too much. Way too much.
That's all right. Well, we'll get some disagreement on the Heisman chatter later.
Oh, we definitely will. But I see Stanford really making a statement this week. Again, we mentioned the loss earlier this season to Northwestern. That's week 1. You know, we're here in Happy Valley. We saw Penn State come out and really underperform, not do what they can. But this Stanford team has really started to develop, and I can see them winning this game big. I can see it as a big win for Stanford here.
Really? You think Arizona – I mean, Arizona does have some injuries, but you think Stanford's just going to run away with this one?
You know, I think it'll be a close game up until, I'd say, mid-third quarter, and then Stanford really starts to assert themselves.
All right. And that's going to do it for our game previews. We're going to go to a quick break, and on the other side, we'll be talking Heisman. Yes, folks, it's time to start talking Heisman. We are in week 5. So we will be back after these messages on Penn State ComRadio. This is the opening drive.
Ugh, why is looking for somewhere to live so hard? It's already bad enough I have classes and work to worry about.
I know, everything is either too expensive
Or too far from campus. I don't have that kind of money to buy a bus pass every month.
Haven't you guys heard of A.W. and Sons? They have 5 different apartments located downtown, which is walking distance to everything. And you don't have to worry about the multiple bill hassle either, because your monthly check includes heat, air conditioning, electric, basic and expanded cable, water, sewer, and trash. Get this, it also comes furnished. A.W. and Sons definitely made my life easier.
Welcome back, everybody, to Opening Drive on Penn State ComRadio. We are done with game previews for the time being. We'll get to picks later, but now we're going to go to the Heisman Watch. It's week 5. Time to start looking at this stuff, folks. And for those of you who have been looking at it, I think we have a clear-cut favorite. We usually don't this early in the season, but LSU's Leonard Fournette has just been incredible. He is so just electric on the field. 244 yards last week against Syracuse. 631 yards on the season through 3 games. That's incredible. He has just been the best. And let me ask you, Dave, have you ever seen anything like this beginning to the season Leonard Fournette is having?
Leonard Fournette right now has the possibility to be the fastest player to 1,000 yards rushing. He would do it in 4 games if he gets 369 yards rushing tonight. And this Eastern Michigan team he's playing gives up 373 yards rushing a game.
Wow.
So it's a real possibility that he eclipses that 1,000-yard mark in only 4 games. And Kirk Herbstreit said it. Him and Leonard Fournette and Adrian Peterson are the best running backs he's seen in the last 20 years. That is high praise for a guy right now who is just tearing it up, putting about 200-plus yards rushing a game. He is destroying college football right now.
Yeah, and that's high praise coming from a guy whose life and career revolves around college football for the past 20 years. Brandon, you ever seen anything like this?
You mentioned the comparison with Adrian Peterson, and one thing I'll add in here against Eastern Michigan, barring any kind of injury here for Fournette, he's got 1,000 yards. I'm going to say that here right now. If he can stay in this complete game tonight, he's got 1,000. Now, one thing I want to look forward to is the last 4 weeks of the season, because that's when the LSU schedule picks up. He has Alabama, which is, somewhat of a shaky defense, and we have a lot of time between here and now. So, of course, so many things can change. But for the last 4 weeks is at Alabama, Arkansas, at Ole Miss, and they end the season at home versus Texas A&M. I think if he can stay on pace, he's averaging about 210 yards a game. If he can continue to do that, and even have those breakout games here and there, he will be a name to remember. There's no question, and the Heisman is his.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right now, it's incredible. Through 4 weeks, it's his to lose, which is something we don't really see often in college football. So, as we're saying, the Heisman is Leonard Fournette's right now. But if he should falter, if he should come down to a human level from the incredible high performances he's putting up, who do you guys think could be that guy to come in and take it away from Fournette should he stumble?
I really like my man Trayvon Boykin out of TCU. He's done a great job leading them so far. He already has nearly 1,500 passing yards on the season. He's doing big things, and honestly, looking forward to his schedule. There aren't too many teams that are going to have the defenses to stop him. Oklahoma won, Baylor as well toward the end of the season. If he can keep going with these numbers, I think he can make it somewhat of a race. Again, we still said Fournette, it's his to lose, but he can put up a fight.
See, I like Boykin. The reason I'm not going to take Boykin is because I don't think that being in the Big 12, he will have the schedule resume for them to give him the Heisman. Lately, you've seen the best team usually has the Heisman winner on it. So if you are on the best team, you have a much better shot at winning the Heisman. Now, my guy, I'm not going to say he's on the best team, but he's putting up numbers comparable to someone I've already compared him to today. I'm going to go with Kyle Allen, who no one is talking about right now. At this point in the year, he has 952 passing yards for 11 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Passing yards are kind of low, but that should improve looking at the schedule. You have Mississippi State this week, Alabama, and Ole Miss. So his toughest games are within the next couple of weeks. Then toward the end of the season, I'll have South Carolina, Auburn, Western Carolina, Vanderbilt, and finish out with LSU. So for a good stretch of weeks there, he doesn't really play anyone. But let's compare him real quick to the other guy that everyone knows from A&M, Money Manziel, Johnny Football. Johnny Manziel, when he won the Heisman in 2012, at this point in the year, 4 games in, had thrown for 1,094 yards and 10 touchdowns. So he's only about 100 or so yards off in passing yards, and he already has more touchdowns than Johnny Manziel had at this point. Granted, Johnny Manziel also did it with his legs that I'm not sure Kyle Allen has that ability to. But I think Kyle Allen is being really overlooked right now, and if he can win some games in that tough SEC, put up numbers against those good teams like Alabama and Ole Miss, that boosts his resume more than Boykin because he has those harder games.
Yeah, I'm going to go with another SEC guy, and this is one that hasn't really faced anyone yet. It's Georgia's Nick Chubb. They've faced very weak teams their first 4 weeks of the season. I think should he come out later today against Alabama and put up a good showing, I think he's on the coattails of Fournette. I mean, you can't scoff at almost 600 yards. I say almost 600 yards because he's at an excruciating 599. That must have been rough to come in the locker room and see that after that game. But I really think, and if you look at their schedule too, we're talking about kind of weaker schedules. They are in the SEC East, but they play Alabama. That's going to be a tough one. And then the real only test the rest of the year is Auburn if Auburn can get it together. And that's it. I mean, we talked before how we don't think Florida really is legitimate this year, and they travel to the Swamp on Halloween to play them. But besides that, you see they have Tennessee, Missouri, Kentucky, Georgia Southern, Georgia Tech, all teams that he can have an incredible performance against. And if he keeps it up the way he's been going and shows the country against Alabama today that he is a primetime back, I think he's really right up there with Fournette.
And John, you talked about the schedule. I think today is the biggest day for Nick Chubb because if he comes out flat, nobody's going to care what he does down the stretch against those other teams. And Dave mentioned it before, too. One thing that people look at in the Heisman player and the Heisman candidate is success with the team, because how can you be the best player in college football if you're not leading your team to success?
Yeah.
I really like Trayvon Boykin because TCU, they're doing well right now, and they have a great shot at success. A&M does as well, but I see TCU staying up there in the rankings.
Well, I think one more guy you should look at, too, just real quick, is Ohio State's Ezekiel Elliott, especially considering if Ohio State's going to start to really turn it around, it's going to start, I think, with Elliott. Elliott's still playing well this year, but he's not playing exactly at that same level we saw him at, going into that national championship game. And we could argue that the Big Ten is maybe the best conference division in college football right now.
Wow.
So I think you can make that argument. You have defenses in Northwestern. You have the Michigan State defense that he still has to play. So by season's end, he could have the strongest resume in terms of not only statistics that he put up, but also teams he's played. Because we've seen before, like I said, not necessarily is the best player in college football going to win the award. It might be the best player on the best team. Because you look a couple years back, Jameis Winston won it, even though some guys may have had better numbers than Jameis Winston.
All right, I'm gonna let you back up a little bit. You said that the Big Ten is the best in the country right
I think
now?
it might be the best conference in the country. Although they've been shaky at times, polls don't lie, first of all. You have the best two teams. You have number 1 Ohio State, number 2 Michigan State. But also, I think I've just liked what I've seen from the Big Ten. I like classic, hard-nosed, defensive battle football. And I think that's what you get from the Big Ten. You get those Northwesterns. You get Ohio State, who is the most probably athletic team in the country. You get Michigan State, who, in my opinion, is the best team in the country. I've said it before. I just think that the Big Ten as a whole has the most firepower, and they'll only get one team in the playoff, but I think they have the most talent and the best resume if you want to win the Heisman.
All right, Brandon, you seem like you had something to say after we were talking about Elliott.
You know what? Well, first of all, back to Ezekiel Elliott. 455 passing yards right now. You think that can do it? I don't think so. And not to mention, they almost had a huge, tremendous disaster against Northern Illinois, escaping by 7 points with a 20-13 loss. Are you serious?
That's a fair point.
You also put on top of that, they came out. Now, granted, it was at Virginia Tech. They were down in the first half going into the locker room. They were down. Now, only 3 points, and yes, they did get back into this game, but I really don't see where your argument is coming from there. Now, when we go over to the Big Ten, I think it is becoming a much closer battle. I agree with you there, but I think the SEC is still the flashy way to go, and that's where everyone looks when we talked about all these big matchups today. The SEC is where people are watching college football. Now, is the Big Ten doing a much better job? Yes. Should Ohio State be number 1? No.
Wow.
Well, on to your point, first of all, about Northern Illinois. Ohio State did this last year, too. They played down to competition constantly. But what did they do when it mattered? They won football games. They ran through the playoff and destroyed the teams they were supposed to beat. They play up to the better competition, and they play down to the lower competition. Don't really know why, because they should be destroying teams like Northern Illinois.
Yes, they should.
But they win the games, and that's what matters. They have the W. They don't take the L's. And on your other point of the SEC this year to me is the weakest it's been in a while. Alabama's not where they normally are. We talked about before, Florida's not legit. We're not sure about Mississippi State. A&M, although I like Kyle Allen, they're still a huge question mark. Ole Miss and LSU are really the only teams who have really showed us a lot out of the SEC. And I just think the Big Ten has more to offer and has better teams that have already proven themselves this year against teams out of conference.
But how can Ohio State stay at number 1 with their schedule? I mean, they don't see any huge competition. Penn State comes to them. Okay, so, most will tell you, okay, that should be a win for Ohio State. They go to Rutgers. Rutgers is nothing this season. Their big matchup is until November 21st when they host Michigan State. So you're telling me for the next few weeks, until our second to last game of the season, we're really going to see the Ohio State team we want to see? How can they stay at number 1?
Because all you have to do is win. and that's what they've been doing. If you can make it to that Michigan State game undefeated, that speaks for itself. You haven't lost the game yet. Whether you're playing good competition or not, it's a win is a win. This week, they're playing, like them or not, undefeated Indiana. Like we've talked about it before. We've talked about it before. Indiana might not deserve it, but they're undefeated at the time. So it still looks like a good win. And then even deeper than that, I think the Polars aren't going to knock them off of number one just because they play in the, just because they're not playing the higher caliber of competition maybe those SEC teams are.
But here's my question to you. What if they falter a little bit? They don't lose to one of the weaker teams. Say Penn State goes to Columbus and it's a double overtime game and they win on a field goal. Then do you think maybe they might slip out of that number one spot?
No, because like I said, happened last year too. Penn State played them into that double overtime game.
Yeah.
And the voters, I think they know that at this point Ohio State, for some reason or another, is playing down to the competition when they really shouldn't be.
So, Dave, what you're telling me right now is the number one team in college football is the team that has an easy schedule and wins.
It might not be fair, but they're not. I don't think they're going to knock Ohio State off. It's not fair, like you've said. But at the same time, I don't think right now the best team in college football is Ohio State. I don't think they should be ranked at number one. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't think the voters are going to knock them off of number one. I personally think Michigan State should be the best team in the country. And I think LSU is the second best team in the country right now.
Okay, so now that both of you have established that you don't think Ohio State is the best team in the country, aside from being number one, Dave, you said you think it should be Michigan State. Brendan, who do you think it should be?
Right now I'm going to have to agree with Dave here. Pains me to say it, but I'm going to have to agree with him. They've been playing really well, and I do agree that the Big Ten is one of the best conferences. I say second best, just behind the SEC. For the Michigan State team, they've been playing well. Oregon made it a game in the fourth quarter. They scored 2 touchdowns, and they still came up short. And again, Ohio State and Michigan State, they see the same teams. And it all comes down to that November 21st game.
Yeah.
Mark it down on your calendars.
100%.
I think the winner of that game is going to the college football championship.
Well, and also, you look at that Oregon game, that isn't the Oregon team we're seeing now that's struggling. That was a full-strength, healthy Oregon team. Vernon Adams at quarterback before he hurt his finger. Granted, I'm not a believer in Vernon Adams to begin with. But everyone looks at that as a high-quality win because Oregon still had all the pieces that they thought could possibly take that team to a national championship.
Yeah, and I think another thing that came out in that Oregon game, we were talking before about Deshaun Kaiser maybe showing his inexperience this week at Clemson. I think that's what you saw with Vernon Adams. I mean, he has experience. He has 3 years at Eastern Washington. He was phenomenal there, but that's FCS football. And in FCS football, you don't see any environment like going to East Lansing. So I think really that's kind of discounted in that game, that was really where things started to fall apart for Michigan State. Not for Michigan State, for Vernon Adams.
And one thing now, looking at the top 25, I think you can also look at TCU. My boy Trayvon Boykin, if he keeps playing how he's playing, they're going to stay up there in the rankings if we go by your theory there, Dave.
Well, see, my problem is I like TCU, but I think people have been too high on them the entire year, and I don't think they're the best team in the Big 12. I think Baylor's the better team in the Big 12, personally.
Wow, see, I've been pretty high on TCU. I've been pretty high on Trayvon Boykin this year. I think this is the year. They're another one of those teams that's always around and seems to kind of fall off towards the end of the year. I don't think they do that this year. I think we could legitimately see TCU in the College Football Playoff National Championship game.
I agree with you, John. I mean, their one big game down the stretch is hosting Baylor. They do see a few tough teams here, West Virginia at Oklahoma. They host West Virginia, yes, but Kansas State, Iowa State, Kansas. I mean, these are teams they should easily knock off, and I see them coming down to their game against Baylor come November 21st.
Yeah, those games against West Virginia and Oklahoma, those are the two things that they're going to need to show the voters and the country, because those are games that in years past they lose. Even if they're ranked number 2, those are the ones they get trapped in.
Well, and the other problem, too, correct me if I'm wrong, problem being in the Big 12 is you don't play a conference championship game. So it's really win all your games or you're not going to the college football playoff. And I personally don't think TCU is going to win all of their games. I think they're going to drop one of those games to West Virginia, Oklahoma, or Baylor. I think they might drop more than one of those games. I think they actually drop 2 or maybe all 3 of those games. I don't think TCU is as good as everyone is making them out to be.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up the point about the Big 12 with the whole no conference championship game thing. I think that really can hurt them because it hurt them last year. If you didn't have Ohio State come in and just blow the doors off of Wisconsin in that national championship game, if that game's even relatively close, I don't even think we're seeing Ohio State in the playoff last year. I think we're seeing TCU, and they would have been given that shot, and I think they're going to get that shot this year. I think Ohio State could drop that game in East Lansing. I think it's a lot better chance than most people think.
Will drop that game in East Lansing.
Yeah, see, there we go. And then whoever wins that is going to get the Big Ten spot. But I think TCU, this is the year that TCU does it.
So if you had to make an early prediction, who are your 4 teams?
I'm going to go Michigan State, TCU. That's a tough one because there are a lot of those teams lurking back there that can get up there. I'm going to go with those 2. I'll get back to you on that. But while I'm getting back to you, who do you guys think are your 4 teams?
I like your 2. I also see Notre Dame making a statement if they can stay healthy. Stay healthy. Underline that as many times as you can. If they can stay healthy, they could put up a decent shot.
See, if I had to pick some right now, I'd go Michigan State, like I've said. I think Ole Miss, I think they should win the SEC. I think they are above and beyond the best team in the SEC. Don't get me wrong, LSU's good. Mm-hmm. I just don't think they have enough to match up with Ole Miss. Then I got to go, I'm with you. I think Notre Dame's for real. I think they have, granted, they have to win all of their games to get in because they're an independent. So I think them. And then also, I think the Pac-12 is going to get some love this year. Either, I'm not sure if it's going to be UCLA or Utah. I'm going to go with Utah. I'm a big buyer of that Utah team. I think they are playing extremely well against the best competition in the Pac-12. Pac-12 puts up a lot of points, but don't sleep on Rosen and UCLA. I think they could sneak in there.
I'm going to say that the SEC gets 2 teams in there. I'm going to say Ole Miss, and I think, again, if Georgia can beat Alabama later today, they don't have much left on their schedule. I think they can run the table and be the 3rd or 4th team in that playoff. All right, so that is going to do it for that conversation. A very lively one. Thanks, guys. And on the other side of this commercial break, we will be doing our game picks. Stay tuned for who we think is going to win each matchup we've covered today on the opening drive on Penn State ComRadio.
So I'm thinking about living downtown next semester.
No thinking, bro. You've got to live downtown.
Yeah, it's so convenient.
To make it even more convenient, choose A.W. & Sons. They have 5 different rental properties downtown, all furnished apartments at Alexander Court, Beaver Hill, Cedarbrook, Gardner Court, and the Diplomat.
And your monthly check includes everything you need.
Except you.
You wish.
I wish I would have known about this sooner.
A.W. & Sons was made to make life easier for the Penn State student. I mean, you've got to start thinking smart sometime.
I love a woman with beauty and brains.
As if.
And we are back for one final time today on Opening Drive. We are going to give you our picks for the games that we have covered today. We're going to start off same order we did them in going through the show. So we're going to start off with the 12 o'clock games. The first one, West Virginia and Oklahoma. Brandon, who do you got?
I got Oklahoma on this one. I think they're going to pull through. It's going to be a game of the defenses, but Oklahoma in the end.
I got West Virginia. Same reason. I think it's going to be close, but I think that West Virginia defense pulls it out in the end.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing as Brandon. I just think Oklahoma has the better defense in this one. Next game, Minnesota and Northwestern. Who do you guys got?
I got Northwestern. I think the Northwestern defense is just too good. They're not going to let Minnesota beat them.
I agree with you there, Dave. Northwestern has the clear advantage here, and I don't think Minnesota can do much to stop them.
Yeah, I don't think Minnesota can even hang with this Northwestern team. Just don't see it happening. Now to the one that is happening right in our backyards in Beaver Stadium, Army at Penn State.
Penn State, no question. It'll be a fun day here. I mean, it's already been great, and the atmosphere is really electric, although we do have a really overcast day. I think it's really great with the military appreciation going on, but Penn State's going to put a damper on the cadets' spirits, and they'll come away with the easy victory.
Yeah, I got to agree. I don't think this game should be really close at all. Penn State's just more athletic. They're bigger, stronger. They should win this game easily.
See, I think Penn State's going to win this one, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a blowout as a lot of people think it's going to be. There's just been so much shakiness about this Penn State team this year where I see, look, defense is their strong suit. We know that, but I do see a scenario where it could take them a quarter or two to figure out the triple option. This might be a closer game than a lot of people are giving Army credit for. Now to the 3:30 games. Our first one, Texas Tech and Baylor at the house that Jerry built. Who wins this one, guys?
I got Baylor. I think Texas Tech's going to be burnt out from last week, that TCU game. It was just too close. I think Baylor puts up big numbers.
And I agree with you there, Dave. Baylor all the way.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Baylor, too. I just think they're a better team. As we spoke about before, I don't think Baylor wins by anything close to that 17-point spread, but I do think the Bears are going to pull it out. Now to a game where I would probably bet my life savings on what both of you are about to say. Ohio State and Indiana. Who do you guys got?
Ohio State here. They're the clear-cut winner. There's really no questions about this one. Ohio State's going to do a great job today and continue to establish themselves in the Big Ten.
I'm going to go with Indiana. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to go with Ohio State. Spread's 22. They win by more than 22, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way. You could play this game 1,000 times and Ohio State wins it 1,001. There is no way Indiana is going to win this game. Now to a much, 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 much closer game, Alabama and Georgia. Alabama not favored. They're the underdog for the first time in 4 years. Who do you guys have?
I got Georgia at home. You have Lambert at quarterback. You have Chubb at running back. I just think they have more weapons against a weaker Alabama defense.
And you know what? I have Alabama this week.
Wow.
I think, again, we talked about Nick Saban before. He's the man, the myth, the legend, and I think he has what it takes here to put a stop to this Georgia team.
Yeah, only problem with that is Nick Saban's not the one putting the pads on.
That's a fair point. We're a little bit more Saban drama here on opening drive. I'm going to go with Georgia. I think like we were talking about before, this is a big test for Nick Chubb, and I think he's going to pass with flying colors. I think this is where he becomes a serious, serious Heisman contender. Now to another SEC game, another close one. Ole Miss at Florida going down into the swamp after that huge win against Alabama. Dave, who you got?
I got Ole Miss. Like we've said before, Florida's not really as serious as we think they are. I think the inexperience is really going to show of their quarterback here, and I think Ole Miss should win this game.
Yeah, Ole Miss should really be able to take advantage of Florida. And, you know, when we talk about home field advantage, the way Florida has been in recent years, I don't think it's really something that should play much into this game. So Ole Miss should definitely be able to walk out of the swamp with a win.
Yeah, I agree with the both of you. This is another one where the spread is just wrong. This time it's too low, in my opinion. Ole Miss is only favored by a touchdown. I think they win this one by at least 2 scores. All right, so now to Mississippi State and Texas A&M at Kyle Field. Who do you guys got?
I got Texas A&M. I think we debated this one a little bit before, but again, A&M, they should be able to do it, and it'll be a good weekend for them.
I also have A&M, but like I said before, look out for Kyle Allen. Maybe this is the week that he finally puts himself on that Heisman watch list.
Yeah, that's something to watch this week, and something to watch throughout the rest of the year. I think you opened up some eyes today with that Kyle Allen talk, Dave. So now we're going to go two more, guys. 2 more, then we go home. Notre Dame and Clemson. Who do you guys have?
Notre Dame gets the job done. We talked about Kaiser. We talked about Process there in the backfield. They get the job done today, and it's a win for Notre Dame.
Do you believe in the luck of the Irish? Because I think that this might be the year that they finally run the table and make the college football playoff. I got Notre Dame this week.
See, I'm going to say Clemson. I'm going to go the other way. I think this is the week that we see Deshaun Kaiser's inexperience. I don't think he can handle Death Valley. I just don't think he's going to do it. I know you guys don't like that, but I don't think he can do it.
Clemson's garbage.
All right, we'll see. We'll see tonight. And to the late game, Arizona and Stanford.
I got Stanford. I like Hogan at quarterback for Stanford. I just think the experience there. And Arizona showed me last week that they are not who we thought they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think Stanford really makes a statement this week, and they put up a big win over Arizona.
Yeah, I think there's no way Arizona pulls this one out. They simply have too many injuries, and morale has to be low after that huge loss last week. All right, that is going to do it for opening drive on week 5 here on October 3rd. You guys have any final words?
Joey Julius for Heisman.
Oh, I could not agree more.